Welcome to the show.
Don't be afraid to get into the weeds with the nerdiness of everything.
No, we can relate to nerd. No problem there.
I'm really excited that we've got both of y'all as well as Cissy. So hi, I'm Lacey.
I'm Nick.
Hi, Lacey and Nick. This is Charley Parlapanides.
I'm Vlas Parlapanides.
And I'm Cissy.
Super talented, super amazing, and super awesome.
Honestly, we can honestly say her audition, we're like, oh my God. Like,
you honestly, Cissy, when we mentioned that, like everyone was blown away because you gave again so much. There was so much in your performance that all the colors and everything that you did, like you hit it out of the park. Now, obviously, we all love Meredith, and Meredith also, said that you were highly, recommended.
Yeah.
But also the proof was in the pudding. And then just to see you work with like all the different scenes and just like how you it was just beautiful to see an actor work and really, understand her craft, use her craft, bring emotional truth to every moment, color things that you wouldn't even necessarily, know that, oh, that has a little nuance to it that, we didn't see coming. That's the beauty when you get a great actor. They bring something to the role that you didn't even envision. But everyone in the room collectively, just when they hear it, they know, oh, okay, well, this person's special.
And you just know because it's like we have to find her more. We have to find her more to do. She's too good. Got to like pull her in more.
One of the hardest, they say that, well, what were some of the challenges, from season 2? A big challenge was that we had to cut some of your scenes out, not only because it was story. We didn't have the time, and it was killing us because the performance was so damn good. But it can't be just about performance. It also has to be, how is it boarded? How does it look? Yeah. How much time do we have? And it was like
there's a great scene where Persephone comes back to Olympus for the first time, and Cissy was so good. It still pains me.
Oh,
I wish, I might ask Mike if we can get the boards and just throw it online because I want that performance to exist.
The performance
somewhere, so someone can see this scene somewhere.
Oh my God!
Even if it's just on Twitter or Instagram.
I mean, this is being recorded, right? I can play this back for myself when I'm having a bad day.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is going on your reel.
Here's the thing, though, is like walking into a show like this. Like I watched season 1. I watched it in the first week that it was out. I knew, I know Elias. He's been a friend. He's the voice of Seraphim. And I knew a lot of people who were involved with it. And I was like, oh, man, what a dream job. Like working with a cast like that and people that care about the source material. And there's so much love that went into every little thing. I was like, man, that would be a dream. And then I got that audition and I was like, hello.
You're great. We'll always try and cast you in everything we do, and we just hope, that we love working in animation in this space and this story. But we're at the behest of the movie gods now and the streaming gods. We have to see how the numbers come out. But Cissy, you will always be on like speed dial.
Absolutely.
Well,
since we're on the Cissy hype train at the moment. Binging the couple seasons in the last couple weeks, you get into it. But then when you get into season 2, coming in with a full cast of characters and a bunch of powerful characters, and then Cissy, when you're coming in with that that voice and that essence, like you could feel that it was tangible on that, bringing that to season 2.
Disappointed mother, yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
But not a disappointed mother you want to cross. That's the...
I mean, autobiographical. What am I going to say?
well, Nick, no, that's well said because there's a strength to the voice.
Yes.
And it's there. And I think that's what you're speaking to. And I have to agree with you. It's there. And it really makes a difference. It really does. So, yeah, I second that.
Someone said that, Demeter could have very easily been a Karen, but she's so strong that she's not. And I really think that's Cissy's performance that elevates it from that, it could have been that. And Elias has said this many times. He's like, everyone brought their A game. Everyone.
That's true.
And I will say for the audience too, like we did this season 2 when we recorded, everyone was just on their own. We didn't record in the studio. Season 1, people were in the booths together, working off each other. They're just doing this at home against air. And it's like pretty amazing. I know in the end, how it gets made, how the sausage gets made doesn't really matter to the audience. Their job is just to, watch it and enjoy it. But I'm saying from where we sit, it's like only because these actors are so talented, and we have people like Cissy, can you get these performances under the situation that it was made under a global pandemic. Like, I don't know, Sissy, you can speak to that, but I think what you did is incredible and what the cast did is incredible.
That is the nature of this job, which is, one of the things that I appreciate so much about you both being so effusive is I kind of operate in a void. I either book the job or I don't. And usually it's like the night before it comes out, I'm just sitting there thinking, well, I hope it doesn't suck. That's kind of it. Like, that's kind of all I get. So this has just been a dream, truly.
If I could just for a moment go back to even nerdier, back in the beginning when I first started the show and with the first opening lines, of course, expecting all the Greek mythology, but then you're going into stories that haven't been told. There's kind of that pantheon of Greek gods and demigods, but you decided to, instead of tell those stories again, is to dive into something new. What was your inspiration for taking that aspect and trying to tell new stories?
Nick, it's what Vlas and I always say, it's just getting past the gatekeepers. Because in a lot of ways, this story is a Hercules deconstruction. And if you were to tell an executive, I'm going to pitch you Hercules, they don't know that he had a twin brother and that one was the son of the king and one was the son of Zeus, and that, that Heron was trying to kill him when he was a baby and always hated him. And all of this is just Hercules. But if you say Hercules, people think Kevin Sorbo, young Hercules, with Ryan Gosling, they roll their eyes. They don't want to hear it. They glaze over. So even though there's a very great story, Milius, who wrote the famous speech in Jaws and who wrote like Conan, the first Conan, which is a movie we absolutely love, he talks about, there's a great documentary about him, and he went in and he pitched this story, and it was very much a Western. But the woman's like, no, I don't think that story's very good. And when he walked out, he goes, I guess she doesn't like Macbeth. Because basically he just pitched her Macbeth, but he said it in a Western. But sometimes in our business, to get people excited to say yes and to buy something and to make it, you got to give it some sizzle. And so instead of basically saying like, oh, well, this is a deconstruction of Hercules and these are the story elements we would use from that myth, you have to say, hey, what if, this was an oral tradition. Some stories, were lost and this is a lost story. They sit up, they get excited. So it's sometimes what we say in this business, some of it is sizzle and some of it is steak. And that's all just sizzle to kind of get the door open, if that makes sense.
But I would piggyback off that, and I think it's an amalgamation of that, and also just wanting to be able to tell a story that we felt was unique. So we knew the stories of the Greek mythological tales, and we thought, well, that's cool, but that gets us like halfway there or 3/4 way there. And then wouldn't it be cool if we do this? Wouldn't it be cool if we did that? And then we would even start asking ourselves questions like, what if we did this? What if we did that? And that all of a sudden expands everything. Yeah. So you go in with a certain entry point, you go in with something that's uniquely, that's familiar, and then it becomes uniquely familiar because then you allow yourself and you give yourself the artistic license to go where you want the story to go. You're not beholden to anything where you have to stay on the tracks of a certain story, because you can just say, well, hey, no, this is one of the stories that got lost in all of this. It was an oral tradition and it got lost, and this is one of the lost ones.
Because what Nick's referring to, Nick, what Vlas is referring to is that in the Hercules story, him and Ephocles, his half-brother, they become friends and allies, and they go with Jason and the Argonauts on the Argo. And we said, well, instead of them being allies, wouldn't it be kind of cool if they could somehow be adversaries and then not even know that they were brothers, and then slip in a little Oedipus Rex and have some tragedy in there? And so the elements that we find fascinating, and there's so many amazing stories and archetypes, but if you are given the freedom to kind of reshape it, you can create something even that much more exciting, in our opinion. And again, it's getting past the gatekeepers.
Yeah, and there's something exhilarating for writers. Like once you really know your characters and once you really establish what their wants are, once you reach that point, then it's just fun to let them lead you and let them bring you the story. Like the story unfolds almost organically from that point. And again, you can only do that if you're not beholden to something. You can kind of really embrace that and really let it go where it's going to go. And sometimes we don't know where it's going to go. There were times where we didn't know where season 1 or season 2 was going to go. We had an idea, we had a broad general kind of outline, but we're always very malleable. And we're always, looking to see like, what's the best iteration of this story? What's the best character arc for this character? What's also, in terms of the emotional truth, because we want everything to come from a place that's organic and not forced.
I have a question from what you just said. How did you get there with Heron and like his motivation, where he's coming from, as well as Seraphim?
It starts with passion and being and writing from things that you know, and really trying to make the story as personal as you can make it. So our mother was born and raised in Greece. Our first language was Greek. Even though we looked the way we looked, we were outsiders, or we felt like outsiders. We didn't quite fit in. And so we just kind of took that and said, okay, let's look at a character who's the quintessential outsider. You dramatize it. So Heron didn't have the experience, and we didn't have the experience at Heron. We weren't, say, considered bastards. However, we knew what it was like to feel like an outsider, and then we just dramatized that, and we just made him the quintessential outcast and the quintessential, person that was ostracized. And I think that everyone at a certain point in their life can feel like they're in some ways being ostracized. They're in some ways an outsider of sorts. So it starts from there, and then you kind of have to figure out, like, well, what does he want? And, he wanted to know who his father was. He never knew who his father was. He discovered who his father finally is, and then he has to deal with that. And then more importantly, he has to deal with the anger that has come about from living the life that he had lived. And then he has to make a decision. Am I going to let that anger destroy me? Is that something that's going to, stay within me and it's going to eat me, up inside? Or am I going to be able to let go of that anger? And in letting go of that anger, you hope that then he can overcome the adversity he's pitted against. And that's his trajectory. That's Heron's trajectory in terms of anger. Seraphim's, well, he never lets go of his anger, and that brings about his downfall. And then for Hera, that anger, we wanted that anger to be something that brought her to a new awareness. And we're going to track her emotional arc, over, it begins in season 2, and God willing, and in season 3, you'll see that she has a new awareness.
Also, Lacey, to be honest, there's always a certain amount of discovery when you're a writer. And it doesn't matter. We've been in the Writers Guild 17 years now. We're big believers in what David Chase, the creator of The Sopranos, always used to say. And obviously, growing up at the Jersey Shore or with lots of Italian friends around, mafia types, that is like one of our all-time favorite shows. But he would always say, for a season, you'd want to know thematically what it was about. And then he would say, I know 2 or 3 things that I think we want to explore and see happen. And I think this is where we're going to end. And he would throw those up and kind of plant those flags. And the rest of it you discover as you go. And you feel it out, and you just try and do what's honest and what you feel like. You have to, at some point, you say, I think this is who these characters are. And then as you write them, they kind of reveal themselves to you. So you try and feed yourself as much ammunition and bring as many ideas to the table. But then as you're writing, you kind of find it. There's no one that has this all kind of can foresee 5 seasons or can see where a trilogy goes. Like, you have a sense and you have certain, landmarks, but, you find it as you go. That's the truth.
Most of the writers that we love work in that way, in that they have kind of a broad, general kind of, idea. They don't outline in very, very detailed. We do outline, but in more kind of a general way. And that's how Coppola does it. Woody Allen, Ball does it that way. So many of the writers, Quentin Tarantino does it that way. And we just have found that the story comes about in a more organic way when we do it like that.
So in the beginning of the first season, you've got the Greek gods. And of course, there's so many tales of the Greek gods, and the Greek gods are incorrigible in a lot of those. That's the nice way to say that. But as the season got going there, you really created kind of human aspect to a lot of them, as opposed to, treating them like they were gods the entire time. You brought that human element. What was that kind of that storytelling aspect that you needed to ground them in that kind of reality?
That is, to be honest, all credit goes to the sandbox we're working in. The truth is that's how Greek mythology is written. It's not like the Judeo-Christian God that is all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving. They're anthropomorphic, meaning that they have human qualities. And you just read stories like there's a very famous story, Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus, but she fell in love with Ares. And then Ares one day snuck in to see her. And basically Apollo and Hermes dropped a net on them to catch them so that Hephaestus would come back and discover that, she was two-timing him. And the two, they were half-brothers. They thought, Hermes and Apollo thought this was hilarious to do this to Ares. Like that, if that doesn't sound like stupid family stuff that we all do, I don't know what does. And so you read those kinds of stories and you realize no, they're not gods with a capital G, like with Morgan Freeman's voice, and are perfect. They're gods with a lowercase g that are just, to be honest, more like the equivalent of what our superheroes are like now. And then it's a question of are they like The Boys and we go really dark? Is it more Marvel? Where do you fall? But just the material itself, that's, there's so much rich family drama that you just let that lead you. And you say, okay, this is how they have them interact in the ancient stories. What does that tell us? And so to us, it just said family. They're just a messy, messy family.
Absolutely. It's like a soap opera. But what's great, when gods are involved, everything is times 100.
Yeah.
So it's not just pride, it's hubris. It's exaggerated pride. And it's everything's almost on a bigger scale. So you get to explore betrayal. You get to explore, jealousy, rage, anger, all these cool, thematic themes and things that we all feel in many ways, love. But they're also wise at times, too. They have also positive qualities. They're brave.
Putting the fun in dysfunction.
Yeah.
Well said, Cissy.
I've seen some interviews from y'all where you talk about wanting to bring original source kind of back to the forefront in telling stories of Greek mythology, comparing with the way Greek gods appear in other media, like in Marvel or DC or anywhere else where they pop up. And then I feel like I was reading something about how the form that the show on Netflix is in now, the way it came about was you had originally been playing with an anthology idea, and the story of Heron was going to be further down along. So kind of this world that you've opened up of more accurate to, I feel like accuracy is such a weird concept when we're talking about mythology, especially oral traditions. More traditional, I guess.
No, Lacey, I get what you're saying, and what you're referring to is that when you have amazing actors like Cissy, watching American Horror Story, and the idea that you could do an anthology show, and what's always tough with that is that, well, what do you do with the cast? You have to have them locked in. And it's now they can play different parts in this new story. It's just going to be an anthology series. And to us, the perfect sandbox for that was Greek mythology. And we always loved the story of Icarus and his father, Daedalus. He's this amazing character. He's like the Tony Stark of the ancient world. He's like this master's weapons inventor. And in Athens, he gets accused of murder, which he may or may not have committed. And he has to flee, him and his son, and they go down to Crete. And they take refuge with King Minos. And long story short, then, the whole thing happens with the Minotaur, and he has to create the labyrinth. And he knows that as soon as he's done building the labyrinth, they're going to kill him and his son because they don't want the Minotaur to escape. And that's where they come up with the wings. But what was cool with that is that story, if you really pare back what that story is, there's so many great things in it that would be magical. But then what's cool is that then Theseus comes through, obviously, to come kill the Minotaur, and then, he intersects that story. And then when Icarus falls after he flies too close to the sun, in mythology, it's said that Hercules recovers his body out of the ocean. And so we thought you could do 10 or 13 episodes of this Daedalus and Icarus story and see how all of this Minotaur stuff goes down. And then the next season, Hercules pulls Icarus's body out of the ocean, and then you go on to him, the 12 labors, or you see him join, the Argo and go with Jason and the Argonauts. And then the next season is some other story from Greek mythology, and then we always wanted to do the Hercules story. Because there's great stuff like, when Hercules kills his one teacher and he has to go on the run and redeem himself. There's so many of these. I jokingly always say this, like if I won the Powerball, we would just produce these stories as is. But again, in our business, like Cissy will tell you, when you audition, sometimes it's not even, about the quality of your audition. Sometimes it's other things. And sometimes with a pitch, it's not even the quality of the story. It's about other things.
Sometimes you don't own your own voice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very laudable what Cissy's doing, fighting on that front. We have to give some mention to that, and maybe she can jump into that whenever she wants. But
we'll get to that in a minute.
But that's what you're referring to.
I used to teach a little bit. I don't have time anymore, but I had an anecdote that essentially, like, when you're auditioning, you never know what the listener is doing when they hear your audition. So I just always assume they're just eating a shitty sandwich, and they're mad because their sandwich sucks, and like, I guess I've got this stupid sandwich. And if I'm lucky, I'll make them put their shitty sandwich down and go, wait, play that back. You know what I mean? But you never know. If they're having a bad day, maybe you don't book the audition, or, whatever. Who knows? It's so at a whim, anybody's decision in this business.
And it's subjective too, to be honest.
I'm fascinated by the process. I was going to ask you, like, what is your process? Like, when you get the script, you look at it, like, how do you go about bringing that character to life?
Oh, I mean, something like this one is so, it was so fun because I'm vaguely familiar with Greek mythology, not nearly as much as you guys are, but I got to do a little bit of research about her and, who is she and what motivates her, and why is she, why is she so kind of bitchy to her kid, and what's this all about? Oh, her kid wants to go live in hell. Well, maybe I'd probably do the same thing if my kid was like, I'm gonna go live in hell. But so it's if there's material that I can dig into and research, I will do that. If there's like references that I'm given, I will try to understand why the references are given. But at the end of the day, it comes down to who am I? And what am I trying to get out of my scene partner? And my scene partner could be Hades. My scene partner could be audience. My scene partner could be, I don't know, my lover. But what am I trying to get? And how do I go about getting it? Right? There's the standard who, what, why, where, when, how. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? What just happened? Blah, blah, blah. Of course. Courtney Taylor, who I believe also worked on this show.
Yeah, she's on the show. Yeah.
Has one of my favorite answers to this. And she says, I start with the shoes. I try to figure out what kind of shoes does this person wear? Are they like spiked stilettos with, like chain spikes all around them? Are they soft ballet flats? Because that will completely change who the character is. And I've completely co-opted that. I love you, Courtney Taylor. Thank you for that.
Like what's in your wallet?
What's in the wallet?
What's in the character's wallet? Like what's in his pockets? What are in their pockets?
Yeah.
Like that's how you really know you're living the character. It's not anything the audience sees, but what would they have in their pockets? What were they? It's well said. And Courtney is the voice of Hecate in the show, so Hecate. But she was great. The voiceover community. They do not get, I feel, the respect they deserve, because these are some of the most talented people we've ever seen. And just like what they're able to do and how they can, on a dime, give a different performance. It's amazing.
What do you need? Like, if someone were to be starting out, I'm just curious, if someone were to be starting out, a young actor, and they've just, graduated from some XYZ, theater program, and they say, okay, I want to be a voice actor. Like, do they need to pay, to get a voice demo? Or is that expensive? Like, what do you need in the toolbox?
There's no standard answer because everybody's journey is different. But the standard answer I'm going to give you is, first off, they need to understand that it doesn't matter if you have a good voice. It matters what you can do with it. Like the number of people that come to me and they're like, everyone tells me I have a great voice. And I'm like, neat. Like, what can you do with it? Can you act? You know, there's a lot of people that don't understand that what we do is not just reading words off of paper. We do actually have to act it, often alone, often in a void, without, you know, the benefits of body language and you know, facial expressions. So it's understanding that there's a ton of voiceover classes that people can do. And once you get to a point that you're comfortable giving proper emotion without all of those things, without a setting and costume and body language, then you can look at getting demos. There are tons of demo producers, and they run the gamut from, you know, $500 for a probably not great one to like $3,000.
Really? That's a lot.
And then you have to try to get an agent. Yeah. So
do you need to have that to get an audition, or can you get an audition without that?
It depends.
The demo reel.
Yeah. So you usually have to have that to get an agent, unless you have just blown someone's socks off. That's a whole different thing. But the type of places where you get auditions like Blood of Zeus comes through an agent. And it's very hard to get an agent if you don't have a rock solid demo. Right. There are, you know, pay-to-play sites online that are doing non-union, which can be really great. It can also be a race to the bottom. You don't always have to have a demo there. It's everybody's journey in is so different. It's so different. So, yeah.
That's interesting.
And you were saying, Cissy, like when you audition, it's like, who knows what the other person on the other end is thinking? Like, that's great advice that you gave your students, because we take this all very seriously, but there's so many traps you can fall into this business that have nothing to do with what your effort was or what you did. And even like Matt, I remember when we first started this process, we listen to auditions very seriously. But initially when we started, you know, on season 1, there were some like name actors that we thought like, oh, we should consider them. And Meredith Lane, our casting, you know, director, would reach out to them, and the representatives would be like, we're not even going to bring this to them. We're not interested. And what happened during that time is that then she started sending us people she recommended that we jokingly refer to as her, you know, troupe of players. And we're like, these voice actors are amazing. The hell with names. Let's just hire the most talented people. Like, and there was a few like influencers that Netflix like initially started like sending us, and we're like, why do they keep having these, you know?
We would cross them off the list.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this just subpar in comparison
they
to
weren't
the
even
other actors.
They weren't
and then
actors.
They kept reappearing on the list.
Yeah.
And then we didn't know what was going on. And then for one particular actor, we just were curious. We just Googled.
Like, he got brought to the callbacks, and we said,
huge social media following.
Yeah.
Massive. So we're like, that's
why Netflix told him to come. But we just said, Meredith, just these voice actors are amazing. Just find us the most talented people. And that's how we ended up with people like Cissy and everyone that's a part of the cast. But sometimes people might just go for the names. And we thought like, oh, we should do that because it makes it seem, you know, what? And then we're just like, no, like these people are so talented. You can't deny that. And like, let's just make something good. And then whatever happens, happens. We'll live with it.
Well, bless you, because I know that the temptation to hire, you know, somebody famous and get to work in the room with them, and, you know, the social media and the, you know, someone who does an Italian plumber is everywhere, and it gets a little old.
That's exactly where I was thinking too. Like, and a lot of the names aren't great voice actors, and you can't.
That's the thing, is it's a different muscle.
Yeah,
it's a different sport.
Yeah, it's just you just hear them
in the same way that, you know, if you put me on like on a live action set, I don't have to memorize things. No, no, thank you.
Oh, but listen, everyone will objectively say that Robert De Niro is one of the all-time great actors. And there's that very famous YouTube clip of him doing like a PSA or something,
commercial,
and he's just like it's a commercial. And he's just very stoic. And the director's saying, can you give us more energy? He's like, I'm not selling cars here. And to be honest, like, you know, maybe his performance needed a little more juice. And there's one of the greatest actors ever. And maybe
we should send you that clip. It's really funny.
I don't know. Have you seen that?
I would love to see it. There's also one with William Shatner where he's like, you can give me 4 directions: faster, slower, louder, softer. That's it. That's all you can tell me. You know, and like, whereas like voice actors were like, yeah, you want me to jump? How high? I'll do it. You know. It's just a different beast.
But it's a different thing. It's a different. The only way I can describe it is it's a different sport. It's just different. It's in the same. They're all in the Olympics, but you don't ask a sprinter to go do the gymnastics. Like, they're different. Like, now they're both super athletes and can do amazing things, but it is different.
This is an absolute tangent based off of what you just said. There is this idea that went around Tumblr a while ago. Like, I want to see like the sideways Olympics where all the Olympians do each other's sports.
That's funny.
I love that, Lacey.
You see a basketball and do the twirl, a basketball player do like the twirl thing, or like
Synchronized swimming.
Synchronized swimming. You know, think about it. Usain Bolt, at one time was going to quit because he didn't think he was fast enough, but he was running the 400. And then
Which is one full lap around the track.
And the coach said,
and he was going to get kicked off the national team.
Yeah, this is one of the, and they said, no, just focus on the 200 and the 100. And then history.
Yeah.
It's just like stuff like that just blows me
He
away.
became the greatest sprinter of all time.
Yeah.
And he almost got kicked off the team because he was running the wrong,
race.
The wrong. The other thing that's funny is, you ever hear the Bill Burr bit? He's like, we need more context in the Olympics. Everybody's a world-class athlete. They should put normal people next to the sprinters so we understand how fast they are and how much better they are than regular people.
I volunteer as tribute.
You just need someone doggy paddling next to Michael Phelps, and then you realize this guy's like a torpedo, and this is not like normal,
That is.
Oh my God. How often when you're watching just regular pop culture, whatever it is, reading books, watching television, seeing movies, are you like, that's a Greek story? That's a Greek story. Oh, that's what's from that Greek story. Like, I feel like it all kind of goes back to either Greek mythology or the Bible.
Or Rocky.
Which is probably Greek mythology.
We have a very well-known writer. I'm not going to reveal who he is, but he's his movies.
He's created one of the biggest franchises of the past 25 years.
And what I love that he does, like, they'll ask him, like, okay, well, what do you think the sequel will be, and what do you think the one after that? And he always just pitches them Rocky, and then Rocky 2, and then Rocky 3. So in the second movie,
he doesn't tell them.
He doesn't tell them it though. That's what does.
They're all just variations of Rocky movies, but he's like he did the impossible, and they don't. But now he's going to do it again, or
he doesn't believe in himself.
Friend dies,
and
then
he's questioning himself. He doesn't really. It was a fluke, and he really has to prove it to himself. And they're like, "This is great. This is great." It's Rocky.
Oh my God!
This is really
tell
funny.
me more.
Yeah, he dresses it up, of course, but it's just really the way he told us that once. And we're like, oh my goodness.
And
that's really
every
funny.
time now we've sold a pilot where we write a script, they're like, what happens in season 2 and 3? And we had an older writer friend who was just like amazing, Nancy Miller. Oh, yeah. And she's like, that's bullshit. They can't ask us that. Like, you got to pay us to figure that stuff out. And there's a long time where I'm like, Nancy's right. But then I'm like, no. We're going to do the Rocky thing. And we just pitch them. And they're like, oh, that's great. You guys see the whole, shebang. And it's,
And now we just share it with you, so we can't do it anymore. But
and Cissy, we all do Greeks. To answer your question, like, it is the big fat Greek wedding thing. Like, we always try and take credit for everything, but sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. We're very proud of our culture, our heritage. We love Greece. It's an amazing place. We're very proud of our people and our culture. But I think every culture does that. You know what I mean? And to be honest, I think there's more universality amongst cultures than not. But, we definitely are guilty of that. But it gets old. I think we definitely do it too much. You know what I mean?
I love it.
This is also random. Do you have a hot take about the stolen Parthenon statues that Lord Elgin stole like 200 years ago? As Greeks, I'm just curious.
Well, what's funny? A friend of ours who we really have so much respect for, Melina Kanakaridis. She's an actress. She was in Providence and CSI New York. We actually put an idea together. It's kind of like a reverse Indiana Jones, where this woman is a professor, and basically what she does at night is she breaks into rich people's houses and steals back stuff that they have in their private collections, and steals back stuff like the Elgin marble and puts them back. And she's stealing for good. It was called Stolen for Good. And she wrote the pilot, and it was great. Ended up not getting picked up, but we love those kind of things. Now, part of it is we see both sides of it, to be honest, because
we agree with George Clooney. He thinks they should go back to Greece.
And part of it is I get that, and I get, obviously Egyptology is really big too. The Hellenic stuff is really big. There's part of us that feels it should go back, but then there's also part of us is that people get to see it. Like I remember, my wife and I would go to New York and go to the Met, and you see all these, ancient Greek sculptures, and we wouldn't be able to experience that, Now we go to Greece, so we get to see the stuff there too. But there's part of us that, it's not bad marketing. It sells our culture. People go to museums all over the world and see the Greek statues there. So it kind of cuts both ways, you know what I mean? But I guess like Vlas said, Clooney says we should put him back, and he probably knows better than us.
We did disagree with George Clooney.
Yeah.
The grand arbiter of archaeology.
Years ago when I visited Athens and, getting to see all the ancient Greece, but like where it was, not just like that this is in a museum, but like this is where everything happened. I mean, there's something magical about that though, too, that you're in the place where the history comes from, I guess.
Oh, I agree with that. I had an experience like that, but it wasn't in Greece. It was actually when I saw for the first time the Colosseum. When you just see the Colosseum, I mean, the Parthenon too, there's no doubt, but there was something about the enormity of the Colosseum. And like when we walked through it and you could just feel the antiquity, it really was something where it was a marvel. I was just really just taken aback and, moved emotionally. And that's one of the few times where I've come across something where I've had that kind of a visceral response. I don't know, maybe our roots trace back to gladiators.
We have a little bit of Greek, Italian in us.
We do.
But, Magna Graecia was the Greek settlements in Italy. So there's parts of southern Italy where the villages, they still speak Greek. They have a soccer team called the Olympians. And a lot of the Italians in southern Italy actually have Greek DNA. So I think there was some cross-pollination there. But
same race, same faith.
Yeah, that's where they say una fasa, una rasa with the Greeks and Italians. But I remember in 2019, my family and I, we went to Olympia. And, my daughter, she's like, oh, Dad, I want to run. They have the track. And we tried to run like a lap. But it was like 105 degrees. It was the summer in Greece, and we were dying. But then there was a guy for like 10 euros. You could put on these goggles, and it was a VR set that allowed you to see what it looked like then.
Oh, that's cool.
And that was just amazing because, you take the goggles off, you see the ruins, you see the track and where people sat, and the stones are there. But then when you put the VR, they show there was like banners and flags. And I was like, oh, wow. And that, like, I'm against AI, and I don't, for the most part, don't love like technology beyond what we have now. Like, I'm good. We could stop and I would be okay. But that stuff was like kind of amazing. And I thought like, oh, that's really cool to really stand here and think that, okay, this is where they came. Like the path you walk down the hill to go where the track is, and you go through this archway that's like half crumbled, but now you're seeing it with these goggles, and that this was a fully lived in, Cissy can speak to this, like, this culture, they lived this. This was their lives, and these were their rituals and ceremonies. It just like I got goosebumps when I was looking through this VR set. It still gave me a headache, but it was also really cool. It was worth it.
I still threw up when I took the headset off, but
worth it.
Yeah, exactly. Like almost. Like, oof.
It sort of reminds me, Charlie had this old boss of his. It was actually half Greek. We're not going to say who it was, but he was like this huge gambler. He was like a massive gambler. Like he needed that gambling high. And so one time, his buddies were all getting together, and it was it was by a track, like a literal, like a.
So no, they were all meeting up. They were all going to meet up for a golf trip.
That's what it was.
But it was a 5-star hotel, and it had this super large circular
track,
like driveway that you pulled up into the hotel. It was a circle, and it was almost like a mile. It was so big.
So the day before, he gets there early in the morning, and he times himself to see how fast it'll take him to go around that track once. And then he bets his friends the next day.
And then he shows up the next day like he's never been there before. And he's like, I bet you think I could run this in 3 minutes? And they're like, no way.
You're not going to be able to do it. And he did it by like 2 minutes and 58 seconds. And they're like, oh, fuck. And it's just a funny story. I don't know how much he won, but he bet. Yeah, exactly. Just
and he's a pretty successful director. And so sometimes
that's what's so funny. He's very, he was a wealthy guy. And it was just, but like, just
our business is nuts sometimes.
Yeah,
it's just
really.
absolutely nuts.
It's so weird.
Speaking of the visuals, when we're talking about that, so when you were writing this show, did you at all have the visual aspect of what you wanted to bring across, or like animation style, or did that just happen later on as you're exploring?
It's an evolution. You have a certain idea, but then it's a collaborative, medium. So we had great collaborators, and it started even with the character designs with Katie at Powerhouse. She was just a visionary, and many of her in her
Katie
own
Silva.
right.
She's awesome.
She just would draw these characters, and they were just amazing. So then you're like, oh, when you see something that gives you an idea, and you're like, okay, let's go down that path, and then that path you go down a different path, and it all starts to evolve and it builds itself out. So you have an idea, but then you have to like trust the people that you're working with, and trust that, surround yourself with as many talented people as you can, and then, let them do their thing.
The one thing we did say, there were 2 references. They said, like, what do you want this show to look like? And we're huge Conan fans. Robert E. Howard, the short stories, that's like one of the great kind of untapped IPs. I think the actual stories, obviously they've made Conan movies, but if you read the prose, his stories are amazing. So we loved Frank Frazetta forever, like those paintings. Now, that's a lot of line work and not something you can really afford unless you're doing like Pixar level animation. But we said we want that look for it to have a sense of like realism and muscularity. And then Vlas always loved Caravaggio.
Caravaggio is one of our favorite artists. The High Renaissance, that's one of our favorite periods of time. The 1400s, 1425 specifically, that's not necessarily, that's the High Renaissance. And Caravaggio had a massive influence on those guys. And we just love that, that deep contrast. And in many ways, too, we explored, like, there's evil and there's good and there's both. And we always love finding the middle for characters. And so.
But in those paintings, you always have chiaroscuro, meaning you have a true black and a light. And so very bold, darkness and light. And then, for season 1, too, they painted a lot of the backgrounds. And that was something that, because, that was Powerhouse was just great. They said, okay, those are the references. That's how, like, what we all do, like Cissy takes the words and interprets it. They took those visual cues and then interpreted it into this. And we're like, great, this looks great, but you could do this script and you could have it be very cartoony looking, or, very different, or, you know what I mean? Like, so we just said what we liked, and then they helped craft, and Sean, our season 1 director, and Katie Silva and Jesse Piles, who was the background, the BG designer. They really kind of pulled it all together. It was them.
To add to that, we always told them we wanted a cinematic feel. We wanted this to try to be
so beautiful,
as much of as a movie as it can be. And that's, and so when that's the mandate, then it's by design. Then, that affects the music. The music, Paul, did a beautiful. Paul Francis did a beautiful job with the music. It's like an epic score that could be we feel it could be for a movie. So it's how you frame it. It's the acting, it's the music, but everything's done through a cinematic lens.
And one thing we always say is that we don't have all the answers, Vlas and I, for sure. We can tell you that definitively. But we think we're decent judges of talent. And then when you hire talented people, just let them do their thing. Just let them do it. And they will bring back gold that you never even thought of. And that's really kind of our MO.
Yeah, we know that we don't know. And,
exactly.
And we try to leave ego out of it. And like, oh, that's a great idea. Why did we think of that? And then...
Well, that's so much around the auteur myth of especially in cinema, but it's like what team you bring together, like seeing that talent pool, bringing them together is really what creates a lot of those projects that we
so true. But just speak to the auteur theory, and like one of our favorite filmmakers is Martin Scorsese, and he's a huge collaborator. He'll like, okay guys, let's like workshop this, and they'll have the actors improv. So he knows what he wants. but he's open to collaboration. And then that's what becomes unique to his films. And that's the approach that we like to take. And Spielberg does it in, many ways too. We adopted his mantra, best idea wins. We don't care where that idea comes from. And I feel that in our experience has been the directors or the people that are just mean and just like not nice are insecure, really, when they have an idea, because they're insecure. They don't really have a vision. And they're the ones that are like kind of that will hammer people and make people feel small and what have you. Whereas the people that truly have vision and truly believe in themselves are more welcoming to ideas because they're not threatened or challenged by they're not threatened by those ideas.
Cissy, can I ask you? So we talked about the visuals of things, but as a voice actor, you're in a booth reading lines and trying to bring a character to life. What's it like to finally see that character, see yourself on screen?
Oh my God, it's my favorite thing. Because we often don't know, what our characters are going to look like. Are they 8 feet tall? Are they not? Are they, whatever. We don't know. And so getting able to see it, even if it's just for the storyboards, it's so cool. It's my favorite thing. Like, I love being able to go in for ADR, which is when we add like the, efforts, the like, or, if we're running. Because it's hard to do that before there's a picture. So they bring us back in when there's like a storyboard and it's, the simple things at a time. It's my favorite. Cool. It's my favorite thing in the whole world. I love it. I love seeing it.
Can we just have Cissy talk about, because I think it's very important, if you want to, why you were in DC, because this is something that affects all creative people.
Yes.
And we really have to draw lines in the sand. And, we need humans doing art and protecting themselves and then have the ability to continue to do it. So if you would, or if you want to, Cissy.
Thank you.
I love platforming Cissy about this. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I sit on the board of a nonprofit advocacy group called the National Association of Voice Actors, which was initially established with the express purpose of offering access to healthcare for voice actors who were not qualifying under the SAG-AFTRA rules, and quickly became entrenched in the AI discussion around the theft of our voices, because it's real easy to steal someone's voice. We were talking a little bit about this before we started recording, but at the beginning of 2022, it took about 10 hours to get a believable version of someone's voice. Beginning of 2023, it was 4, and currently it is 3 seconds. And so people can take your outgoing voicemail message and use it to create a digital version of your voice without your permission. And the reason we were in DC is because we are championing 2 bills that are making their way, one through the Senate and one through the House, with very strong bipartisan support, which in this Congress is kind of a miracle. One is called the No Fakes Act, and the other is called the No AI Fraud Act. So we were there to show support for it, because what these 2 bills are doing is giving every single one of us, you, me, my kids, the right to their own voice. Because currently you do not own your voice. You own your name, image, and likeness, but you do not own your voice, which is absurd to me. So we were there to support these bills that give ownership of a person's voice to them. And there seems to be a ton of support for it, which is really, really great, because, not only does it protect my industry that I love so much, but also you're hearing all these people getting calls from their children who have been kidnapped and send $10,000, or the Joe Biden robocall in Texas during the primaries. There's infinite ways that people can use our voices against us if we don't have ownership of them. So just, be aware. If you are able, please call your representatives and tell them you support the passage of these 2 bills. It's the No Fakes Act and the No AI Fraud Act. That's why I was there. We were there to support those 2 bills going through legislation. So hopefully they'll pass something soon.
It's great that you guys have been doing that.
With voice acting being such a big industry now, it surprises me just to hear that you have no ownership over your voice, but it's huge with animation gaming.
Yeah, I have found my voice on multiple websites, and when I reached out to them and said, hey, you don't have my consent to have my voice, some of them said, cool, thanks for letting us know, and some of them were like, we don't care. Our users did it.
Wow.
We can hide behind Section 230, which is the Facebook clause that says if your users uploaded it, the company is not liable. And that's what they basically said to me. So I was like,
Wow.
I don't like that. So I started my own company.
Good for you.
Good for you, Cissy. That's so important. And we all need to just be aware, of how technology is evolving and changing around us. We have to fight back and protect ourselves because this is crazy stuff. Good for you, Cissy.
Thank you. And I think AI can be such an incredible tool. I really do. But
Yeah.
we have to approach it with a human first mindset. The second we start thinking about slicing jobs and cutting costs and getting rid of people, what are we left with? We have to approach this stuff with a human first mindset. And I think if we do that, we elevate as a society.
Makes sense. Well said.
Well said.
Very well said.
Cissy for Congress. You got our vote.
No, God, no. No, thank you.
Again, thank you everybody for talking to us. For those of you watching or listening at home, of course, Blood of Zeus is on Netflix, 2 seasons of it. So,
Yeah.
You can go binge it and help those numbers out right now.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. Thank you for having us on.
Thank you for listening. The pieces of legislation Cissy is talking about and continues to advocate for have not been passed. They remain important. So this is my soapbox to you to look up and find ways to support and communicate to lawmakers your support for things like the No AI Fraud Act, No Digital Fakes, etc. Until next time, bye.